Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Bernheide, and I'm with the Game Lab at Kansas State University, and this is part 2 of our video series of learning how to paint miniature wargaming pieces. And today, we're going to start with how we set up our painting, and then we're going to actually throw some paint on some minis and actually conduct a little experiment to see how we like this. So, first thing first, let's talk about our setup. So, we are ready to get started painting. And before you do that, I know I keep adding things before you get started, but you want to take your miniatures and do a couple things to set them up. Number one, look at your miniature. Sometimes the manufacturers will have flash on them, which are just pieces of the molds where the pewter or sometimes injected plastic gets put in, and pieces that are left over a little bit extra. Okay, so I use a pair of tweezers and I get rid of those things and put them in a container there. And then sometimes there's mold lines where the molds come together, and you might need to take a file. An emery board would work, or I've got actual little metal files there to trim the pieces up and make sure they're good. Looking at this piece, it's ready to go. Now, what do I do from there? Well, I have little nails, again, and I used Elmer's glue, and I glue the pieces on, and I try and leave it where there's a little overhang to them, and I'm not actually going to glue this piece on. But with a little bit of overhang, it makes it easy to pop off when you're done painting them. As an example here, let me put this miniature back. Apologize for looking at the side of my shirt there. But like, here's an example right there. I got a little piece hanging on, so when I'm done, pop, it's good to go. You'll notice also I've already put a little thin layer of paint on this. I've used white as a primer. Okay, and I mentioned I'm actually conducting an experiment while I'm painting these with you. I painted a couple minis white, primed a couple of them black, primed a couple of them gray, and one mini I'm going to leave just plain metal. And we're going to do this little experiment and see how primer affects miniatures. Just to give you an idea, because it doesn't sound like it would, but it does impact the final quality of it. You're going to need, excuse me, some rinse water, and use an old container and just keep it your water piece as you go along. And then I always get a paper towel so that I can dry my brush when I'm rinsing off paint. Secondly, I'm going to use that if I get too much paint on my brush before putting it on the piece. I get some of that off. And it's also good to have in case of a spill. I also have some rags there in case of a major spill as far as that goes. The last thing that I do to set up my painting is I make a little assembly line. Now, I got this a long time ago from a card deck. I'm just going to take my nails and put my minis in so that I have an assembly line. And this assembly line is going to help me speed up my painting. That way I'm not going to spend too much time on one piece waiting for paint to dry. I can actually get 8 done much faster, and I can stay on one paint. So it's going to look a little bit like this. They're easy to grab now. I can get right to it and make some progress. Finally, one last tip, and true confession time. I always take one mini when I first start out painting a series of minis, and I paint it completely. So my assembly line technique, I don't jump right into it. What I do, or why I do that, is so that I can figure out my paint schemes. What paint am I going to use and in what order? And so I actually follow, with acrylic paints, I follow the European model of painting it, where I go from inside out, where I'm going to paint the skin first and then work my way from the skin level to the outside of the model. And we'll make sense of that here in a second, but I got my paints lined up in order, what I'm going to use. So let's get throwing some paint on. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is I'm going to show you what paint I use. I'm going to kind of put it on the first piece, and then I'll get the rest of the assembly line and then show you the end result here. First thing I'm going to do, like I said, it's the European way of doing it. There's all sorts of ways that you can do this. Find out what works for you. And again, rule number one, you're having fun with this. It's meant to be your hobby. So I've got human flesh here, or Caucasian flesh. We're painting Napoleonic figures, so most of these are going to be Caucasian. Grab my mini, and the best part, the reason why I like this way of doing it, the European way, this first coat can be sloppy, real sloppy. So I'm going to come out here, a little bit of paint on my brush, and I'm going to get everywhere where there's going to be skin, putting on a light coat. And again, we're going for speed here. I just got back from Historicon. I sound like Bob Ross, I know, talking about stuff, but I learned a session of using contrast paints, and this is acrylic paint. And but all the way through, my teacher there, Jeff Lower, I believe his name was, he stressed speed. There's the head painted. I got some on the hair and a little bit on the uniform. That's fine. We're going to cover this up with acrylic paint. It's no big deal. Okay, so there's step one. Okay, I got paint on all my miniatures there. You're going to see sloppy, real sloppy. That's fine. My big goal in this, because this is a base right underneath coat, I got a lot of paint. I smoothed it out, and I don't have to go back now unless I screw up painting over it. I don't have to go back and redo this. Again, excuse me, you want this thin, light coats, but you want to get it good coverage and get it covered quickly. Okay, when you're done with that, you're going to take your brush, make sure you get all the paint out of it. You don't want to smash it into here, but you do want to get all that out. Put my water back down, and then with your paper towel, you want to make sure that you get the fine point back on your brush. Okay, make sure all that paint's out of there, and make sure we're good to go. I got tons of brushes here, and the reason why, I want to keep going. Okay, and I got different sizes in that. So I want to move to another brush here and go for the second color, which in this case, these are French Napoleonics. I've got a dark blue that I'm going to use for the uniform. And these French Napoleonics that I'm painting, they're in great coats. They were provided by HMGS Next Gen. Thank you guys. I had so much fun this last weekend. And so we're going to paint basically the entire uniform, the coat, and the trousers, this dark blue. So again, just working in there, nice and light. If you get too much paint in one spot, you're going to push it over. And again, if we're a little sloppy with this, it's no big deal. The big place where we got to be real careful with is when we get up around the skin, because we don't want to have to repaint over that skin. Everything else we're going to repaint over. And again, not to sound like Bob Ross while I'm painting here, but if we make a little accident, it's okay. We're going to be able to go back and fix it at another time. While I'm painting this, here's where I'm at so far. While I'm painting this, I will say, why do we prime figures? It's so that the paint has something to adhere to. That's a little bit better than just the bare metal. Now you're there going, well, wait a minute, Bernheide, you're showing us a mini that you're going to paint on bare metal too. Well, I find that when I do the bare metal, if I get this first coat on really well, it's going to stick a lot better. And so now that I've primed this, I can tell that, yeah, it's sticking very well. The paint that I'm applying is sticking very well to what I'm using. And again, up here by the head, I'm getting the collar nice and good, using that fine point of my brush. And so up there around the collar, got a nice sharp line where I've painted. Now it's just a matter of finishing off the rest of the coat. And getting the rest of everything else the shade of blue that I want. Again, if you do make a mistake, that's fine. Don't punish yourself. Matter of fact, you're going to make mistakes. And there is our first miniature. I'll get the rest of the assembly line done here, and we'll be back in a second, show you how it did there.